let's introduce our speaker, who many of us know and love, Taylor Van Winkle. Taylor is the Climate Sustainability Manager. Your title has changed for the county now. The position became a permanent position this year, which was a big win for all of us. Taylor has a master's degree in urban and regional planning from Michigan State with a focus in climate resiliency. And she comes to us from East Lansing, where she served as the associate planner for the city. And she's just got loads of insight and experience planning for cities, developing urban green spaces, frameworks for uh, planning frameworks on an international stage, coming up with grant funding, and collaborating with local community members and groups. So we're so lucky and grateful to have her here permanently. And she's here today to tell us about the newly minted climate justice plan for the county. So Taylor, take it away.
Thanks, Carly, for that warm introduction. I appreciate it. So I'm just going to give an update. The first time I spoke to the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Conversations, or what it used to be called, which was Fridays for Future, I had just entered into the position and begun the early stages. So this was back in 2024, I believe I spoke to the Fridays for Future, early 2024, and now it's mid 2026, and we have done a lot since then. So I'm just going to give an overview of what we've done, what went into the plan to develop it with the council, and what resources we utilized and what frameworks we utilized. And then I'll give an overview of the strategies and the strategies identified in the plan. I will not go into a action by action breakdown because this would be a 5-hour discussion. There'll be time for questions, and I'll try to move through it at a pace so that we can have questions. Time for questions at the end. And I will also give an update as to where our projects are right now, and what funding we have been committing to those projects. All right. So the Climate Action Climate Justice Plan, where did we start? So the Climate Action Plan, you guys know, you guys secured funding for it for 3 years. It originally started at the grant period began in January of 2023. I was not hired until June of 2023. So there was a need for an extension at the end of the grant to make up for those 6 months, which we did secure through Eagle. So that was good. So officially, this month is the 3 years that we've been working with this grant, and it's in its concluding phases right now. One of the big first things that we had to do was create the advisory council, because there was no infrastructure at the county to oversee the creation of the plan. So we did that. We reached out to stakeholders in the community organizations, community leaders, and asked them to apply. And then we interviewed them and placed them. And we ended up with 15 members. It did eventually get winnowed down to 12, just to attrition. The first thing that we did was set up a mission and vision so that we could have our planning practice guided by what we wanted to do, what we wanted to have come out of the plan, what we wanted the plan to accomplish. We started with what we want to accomplish so that we can make sure that we are guiding ourselves throughout the process. So the vision that we came to, and they are a bit wordy, they're a little bit lengthy. The vision was to create a healthy, resilient, and just community prepared to prevent, mitigate, adapt, and recover from present and future, local and regional climate impacts through inclusive participation and climate action planning. And the way that we wanted to achieve that was by collaborating with a diverse array of stakeholders, planning justly, and implementing equitable strategies that benefit everyone. And then also delivering programs and climate initiatives that prepare and protect health and livelihood across the community for both people, the built environment, and as well as the natural environment. We also set guiding principles. So these were decided on by the council. And these were principles that we wanted to make sure were at each step of the process. Justice, equity, inclusion, collaboration, being community driven, and making sure that we are and maintained transparency throughout the process. So the council put together these definitions and agreed on them collectively, and that's where we what we utilized throughout to make sure that we were integrating justice, equity, inclusion, and making sure that every stage of the process was collaborative and oriented towards being the community and addressing community issues. Okay, so one of the first ways that we did this, we set up a climate action survey that was online. We sent this out in 2023. And one of the big questions that we asked was, what does a sustainable community look like to you? This is a key word chart, keyword cloud, showing what a lot of individuals in responses were. There was a lot on public energy, affordability, transportation, access to food, green spaces, and supportive environments. And then we also, throughout 2024, we had 10 community visioning events at local libraries, which we asked them two main questions. The first question was, so we presented, so what we did first was that we presented information about climate concerns for the community. So climate projections, rising temperatures, what impacts those would have on the community. Several of you were there and participated in these events. And then the first question was, what are you most concerned about in your neighborhood? What ways will these climate impacts impact your life? And this was a keyword cloud about what people were most concerned about: air quality, flooding, extreme heat, high heat days, water quality, and flooding and air quality came up again and again and again as one of them as some of the major concerns from the community related to climate hazards. And that makes a lot of sense when you think about how some of the biggest impacts to infrastructure are related to flooding in the area. And then the second question was, these solutions, cast your mind 20 years into the future, these solutions, these problems have been solved. What ways have they been solved? What does your community look like now without these problems? And so this was an opportunity for them to give us what they would like to see. So a lot of people answered that more green spaces were what they would like to see in a future vision of the community. More small businesses, more rain gardens, more native planting, more affordable housing, improved public transportation, and inclusivity in the public realm for infrastructure. Those were a lot of the responses for what they would like to see a perfect future to include. So the ways that we utilized those answers from those public engagement events, those community visioning events, was the first question basically allowed us to give priority to the concerns that would be most impactful to the community. And then the solutions would help us prioritize the strategies that we should begin implementing first. So we utilized the answers from the community in the council to help guide our decision-making throughout the process. With these, we use these as touchstones to make sure that we were prioritizing and assigning urgency according to how the community was. So then our next step, right? So once we've gathered community inputs and we know what concerns are in the community, what do we need to do next? We need to make sure that the community concerns aligns with the expected changes and projections from climate science. and then we need to combine them with best practices. So we grounded ourselves in the science. I am not going to get into, I have a bunch of scientific slides upcoming. I'm not going to get into every single graphic. This is just an example of some of the stuff that we looked at. We spent all of 2024, all of 2025 reviewing climate. I would say half of 2025, so about 18 months reviewing climate models, projections, and strategies to address those concerns with the council. And they did it by topic over time, and we'll get into the topics in a second. These are an example of the stuff that they would look at and take into consideration. I am not going to get into all of the science behind everything because that's its own meeting. So we would talk about projections and climate modeling for changes in precipitation and flooding, changes in heat temperatures, heat wave expectations, how that would impact infrastructure, power outages, and frequency and duration and severity, and how that would impact public health. Those are things that we talked about. We made sure to address the main issues for our region, and then also very specifically, so the Midwest, the broader area of the Midwest in the US, and then also more specifically in the Great Lakes region. So we took a upside down or a funneled approach, right? We looked at what are the global things that are concerns, what are our concerns in the United States, what are our concerns in the Midwest, what are our concerns here in the Great Lakes. How are those different, and what ways are we making sure that our strategies are specific to the issues and the advantages that we specifically have? So we looked at temperatures, expectations, and changes, lengths of seasons, and the projected changes and concerns. This is a big summary of just a highlight of all of the stuff. Changes in temperature, precipitation, and air pollution can have subsequent indirect effects on the environment. And this was one of the diagrams that we kept utilizing throughout the process because it's just a big summary of all of that big stuff. And then we made sure that we grounded that science in a historical environmental context and the current conditions of the community. And so we made sure to bring in environmental justice and climate justice considerations to help guide the formation of the strategies. So if we are utilizing science to kind of point our attention to what needs to be addressed, then we integrated the context of the local area to make sure that our strategies are targeted and targeting those problems and how they look in this community and how they have rippling effects, right? So this is an example. We made, so one of the, so this is just an example. For instance, issues with agriculture have specific impacts to the Kalamazoo region that are different than even if you look at Michigan, the Kalamazoo agricultural impacts are going to be different than the middle of the state or the UP. So even if you're broadly looking at impacts to the state, you want to make sure that the context there is specific to what our economy looks like now, what Kalamazoo has lots of greenhouses. That's really unique. That's a context that we need to make sure that we're integrating. There's a lot of dairy farmers in Kalamazoo. You need to make sure that livestock is something that you're addressing throughout that process, as well as orchards, the unique. So that's just an example. We did this for every single topic. How is it specifically impacting Kalamazoo? And what are those specific economic and infrastructural impacts that make Kalamazoo unique, and those strategies specifically targeted. Okay, and then we also looked at the historical context of the environmental justice component, which looked at the history of pollution in the area, air pollutants, underground pollutants. We also looked at demographics, population characteristics, exposure. So population characteristics would be like age, rates of cardiovascular health, rates of asthma. Other demographics would be race, whether or not they were at the level of education, employment status, income level, those kinds of things. And then also proximity to those hazardous wastes or pollution sites, things like that. And so this is an environmental justice screening specifically for Kalamazoo that is a composite score of all of those features. So we made sure that we were also integrating that, and that helps combine our target and our priorities, right? So if we're prioritizing addressing the most vulnerable, we need to identify the most vulnerable areas and know why that particular community is vulnerable so that our strategies can be best suited to addressing them. And then we also wanted to make sure that our strategies that we were creating were placed in the larger context of what other departments of the county, other regional governing entities and state entities are doing, so that they're in alignment and that there's ways for us to overlap and work together. So the state has the My Healthy Climate Plan, and those goals influenced the development of the climate plan's goals. And then also local municipalities each have their own comprehensive plan. They list a lot of different things. And there's a lot of the rural areas are, they have very different comprehensive plans than your urban areas. For instance, most rural municipalities have a provision in their master plans that calls for preserving rural character or preserving natural beauty or promoting natural space. And most have provisions for the preservation of wetlands and water quality, but that might not be the same as urban areas. They might not call for they're not going to call for the preservation of rural character, but you have to kind of look past it and see, like, what does that mean? Well, that means, that they might be promoting preservation of untouched areas. They might be wanting to preserve farmland, but those are ways that we can align, even if the verbiage in the different plans is different from the urban areas to the rural areas, and making sure that that language is capitalized on in our plan so that they're not in conflict, so that there's a smoother implementation down the line of those strategies. Okay. I know I'm moving through this very quickly. That is all of the content that we use to contextualize our strategies development for the plan. We put ourselves we ask the public what they're concerned about. We ask science what it's concerned about. We ask history and the environment what their concerns are as best as we could, right? And this is what we then we developed overarching goals and thematic goals. So the plan has 4 different themes: housing and the built environment, infrastructure and energy, natural systems, and food systems and agriculture. So each of the four themes has either 7 or 8 identified strategies, and then somewhere between 22 or 26 actions related to those strategies. So strategies are a little bit broader, and actions are micro steps to achieve that strategy. And each of those themes can be further broken down into whether or not it's a strategy that addresses reducing greenhouse gas emissions, so a mitigation goal or a mitigation strategy, an adaptation goal, so changing the environment, the infrastructure or the design of the built environment in order to better be adapted to changing climate projections, or climate resiliency strategies, which are specific to addressing recovery periods and reducing the projected damages that those models and infrastructure assessments were indicated that they might occur in the future. Okay, so we combine all of that. And again, another funnel. So the biggest level at the top is our overarching goals. Our biggest umbrella is our overarching goals. So we want all of our actions, which make up all of our strategies, to orient towards at least one of these goals. Many of the strategies address more than one of the goals. And that's just a benefit of having overarching goals that are broader. So the first one was achieving carbon neutrality across the county by 2050, with at least a 52% reduction from 2005 levels in county operations by 2030. Those are in alignment with those state goals. Like I said, that we made sure that we were in the broader context aligning and not in conflict with other planning efforts. Achieving zero municipal waste in Kalamazoo County, with at least an increase of recycling rates by 45% by 2030, and reducing food waste by 50% by 2030 as well. The third one is to actively support the protection of natural and agricultural systems, using Western and Indigenous knowledge techniques to increase preservation and conservation efforts across the county, assisting in creating a just transition that is both resilient, diverse, and promotes a regenerative economy across the county. The fifth is to strengthen the resiliency of local water, waste, transportation, and energy infrastructure, as well as emergency and recovery services to withstand and recover from climate change impacts and hazards. And then the sixth it calls for leveraging and coordinating resources to advance climate action and eliminate climate injustice on a county and regional scale. So that calls for facilitating and committing resources to that programming, right? And that's important because resources translates to money in the broader, that's just okay. So I'll go over the strategies that we identified. Each of these strategies has 3 to 5 sub actions identified in the plan. I'm not going to get into the action level. Like I said, we'd be here forever. So for the housing in the built environment, we identified the first strategy as that we should promote just land use and development patterns, increasing residential commercial density, reducing sprawl, increasing urban green space, and reducing vehicle miles traveled. So we should design programs to achieve those goals in alignment with lowering greenhouse gas energy. So all of the first and second goals that are the overarching ones set the numbers. So for instance, this one doesn't need to have numbers because it's already set in the overarching goals. So, and then the next one is to support improved building standards and performance standards, need-based energy and efficiency programming, and electrification programming across the county. Promote the adaptive reuse of existing buildings and infrastructure. Supporting the alignment of local policies and regulations with green infrastructure and design, fostering a just transition by supporting the development of local training programs specific to climate readiness trainings to expand those employment opportunities here in the county, increasing the resiliency of the built environment with assessments, monitoring, modeling, and expanding existing programs. And then encouraging the incorporation of climate resiliency considerations in design, review, investments, and development within the county. So that's one where that translates to making sure that the decision-making framework within the county is integrating climate resiliency considerations throughout the process and not just afterwards, right? The next section was energy and infrastructure. So the first one, the first strategy calls for the creation of a basically benchmarking the county's energy use and tracking it over time. That's essentially, right, creating a greenhouse gas inventory and then continually reporting and checking against it. Again, in relationship to those first reduction goals. Support the reduction of energy use across the county, working with the Buildings and Grounds Department supporting the equitable development, or I'm so sorry, deployment and access to private and public renewable energy, planning for and implementing projects to increase EV capacity, expand non-motorized transportation systems, and then also increase the diversity of transit routes across the county. Setting and meeting waste diversion goals across the county, especially through increasing our recycling programming, committing the county to promoting low carbon circular economy actions, and then encouraging a reduction in water use and increasing our water infrastructure and the resiliency of it, and updating that. So that would address a lot of the flooding, but flooding concerns are also addressed in the natural systems section as well. And then also strengthening the resiliency of the energy grid. Then the natural systems also has 8 strategies: increasing preservation of terrestrial systems, increasing preservation of marine systems, protecting ecosystems, and promoting nature-based solutions, increasing stormwater retention infrastructure, and intentionally deploying infrastructure that reduces flooding risks. So like I mentioned earlier, one of the concerns from the community was that kept coming up was concerns for flooding. And so we wanted to make sure that one of the strategies that we had specifically addressed reducing flooding risk and expanding infrastructure to protect against those. And then increasing efforts and funding to support tree canopy coverage in order to preserve improve air quality, and reduce the impact of increasing temperatures. Planning for the resiliency of local water and land ecosystems. That's again calling for assessments, monitoring, and modeling. So collecting more data. Some of the time, some of our local water systems don't even have the data. We need to start assessing them in the first place because they've been around for so long that there's not even good record keeping for it. So through, and then the next one is through education, encourage community connection with nature, and individual preparation for climate hazard impacts. So that's educating the community on how to prepare for a tornado, how to prepare for a flood, making sure that there's programming to help low-income individuals put together go bags and things like that in an emergency. And then the last one for the natural systems is increasing affordability and availability of air quality improvement measures, both indoor and outdoor, as well as expanding the air monitoring infrastructure. That's one of the actions underneath that one. The last section that we have is food systems and agriculture. The first one is to support and encourage sustainable farming practices that protect soil health, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and then reduce harmful chemical runoff. And then protecting and preserving high quality farmland, developing local career pipelines for local food and farm workers, reducing food miles, and increasing local food system resiliency through the development of local food markets. And the next 3 are working with the County Materials Management Planning Council to put into the County Material Management Plan, which is in progress and in development right now, to reduce food waste through increasing recovery, increasing composting, increasing recycling services, and then also to reduce food and plastic generation in residential, commercial, industrial, and municipal sectors, so across all of them. I can stop right here before we get into projects. If anybody has questions about the strategies that they would like clarification on before I start talking about other things. Yes, Nikki, what questions can I answer for you?
Michigan has one of the strongest township systems I've ever encountered.
Yeah.
So how, with all of your plans, do you ensure that the townships and the municipalities will buy into this?
Yes, excellent question. So the role of the county in municipal management, in our municipal system, is to basically facilitate interjurisdictional interactions and cooperation, support local municipalities in their decision making and program development and program deployment, offer resources and assistance in developing those programs and securing grant funding and things like that, and promoting those programs. So if you'll notice, a lot of the verbiage in most of the strategies are supportive in nature, right? So for instance, education is offering resources, calling for funding to support programming, or increasing infrastructure implementation. Let me see. A lot of the actions themselves are supportive in nature, or delivering resources or assisting. So it doesn't force the local municipalities to achieve or do any of them, but it does call for offering the hand out to do those things. So it's more so offering that kind of support structure to allow them to deploy their own issues. I've been working with municipalities throughout these last 3 years on various different projects. And one of the things is that my personal stance is that I don't need a local municipality to necessarily agree with me that climate change is real or that climate change is a concern. All I need to know is, what concerns do you have in managing your municipality? Because I know it's related to climate change somehow, and we can find that ground, right? So if you're concerned about if you're concerned about the need to replace your local fire truck, if that's your biggest concern, we can work towards that collaborative programming, or pursuing grants or something that might have a climate perspective, but it's related to resiliency, or increasing or reducing response time to fires or wildfires, or there are specific things, but broadly we can find overlap, and it's not prescriptive at all.
Okay, have you been working with any of the, and are they being cooperative when you're working with them? Because you say you are working with them. So they
Yeah. So a lot of the municipalities that we're working with, we work with them in a largely, at this point, educational capacity. So I offer municipalities, for instance, for example, in January, I put together educational events on battery energy storage systems in January and February. And that was to allow, that was an invitation to local municipalities to come and learn about battery energy storage systems, renewable energy systems, ordinance language, local concerns, ways that they can introduce those into their local areas. And we brought in experts, and those were very well attended, to the fact where they actually asked us to hold more of those kinds of educational events. And we did another one in April on data centers. They were really concerned about that. So that was something that we brought in experts to talk about. And those municipalities I've had a really good response, especially to offering that ordinance language, educational materials and resources. Some of them, not necessarily all of your sustainability staff might have the municipal management background, but I personally do. So I offer, like to Texas Township, the opportunity to review their proposed language and give them feedback on it. And that's something that they've taken up. That's an offer that they've taken up with me. So those kinds of things, but it's mostly at the request of the local municipality. And my responsibility is to make sure they know what I can do for them. So these are our projects that we have in progress. Because of the way that it worked out with the need to extend the grant, the original grant period that only paid for staff time. So the original grant that funded the creation of the plan was from Eagle. It started at the beginning, January 2023, and would have ended in December of 2025. Were able to get an extension, but because of that and the way that the permanent position became online in January of 2026, there was about a 6-month gap where we were able to repurpose those funds into developing some projects. And so these are the projects that were identified by the council for as a priority. So the ones that we've been deploying these projects since April. The first one has already been completed. It was a collaborative project with the Drains Office. But they did native planting across 6 townships, 6 acres of wild planting, native seed planting along easements and in wetland corridors that the county has authority over through the drains management program. And then there were 2 partnerships for positions were prioritized. So we partnered with the Kalamazoo Conservation District to create a regenerative agriculture incubator organizer. That's a lot of words. It's basically somebody who is going to be working with some urban regenerative ag farms in the city. This particular one is located in Portage, and work with them to establish their incubator, develop educational programming for their participants, and get the incubator off the ground so that we can facilitate new farmers and transition them from into old farmers, into larger scale farms, farming practices. So that's to help lower some of the barriers to entering into the farming business. So if you think of farming as a business, it has a huge upfront financial barrier because you're purchasing land and machinery and seeds and fertilizers, and there's a lot of upfront costs. And so it's a huge barrier for individuals who might not know if they want that to pursue that. So an ag incubator allows them to try it at a small scale, learn some of those, learn and practice some of those early techniques and see if they're interested in expanding their knowledge and actually sinking those costs into expanding a business in the agricultural realm. And so that's the point of that position. The second position that we created with the funding was to create community garden coordinators that we partnered with the Kalamazoo Valley Community College, the Valley Food Hub. So they are working on creating a network of community gardens across the county. They're going to connect with all of the community gardens, get them connected and organized, and helping them coordinate efforts across the county, and hopefully deliver and promote some supplies as well. So if you have a community garden, reach out to the Valley Food Hub, or if you know about a community garden in your neighborhood, make sure you reach out and get them to connect with them because there's some supply budgets available. So have them reach out. And then the final project that we identified and began was a 3-part composting event series. Educational composting events. The first one was in May. The second one is this Saturday. It is at Woolham Preserve, and we are giving out free a little bin that you can put under your kitchen counter, and then take that out to your backyard composting pile. Or if you live in the city, you can take that bin and dump it in your neighborhood food scrap program. The city has both Kalamazoo and Portage have food scrap programs. Where you can dump your compost. You don't necessarily have to have it in your backyard. But those composting events are gonna this weekend. The Woolham Preserve is gonna have free access, so that you won't have to pay for entrance to the park. Everybody who shows up is gonna get a bin, and then everybody gets their name put into a raffle for 3 tumblers, which will be raffled off. Those are the larger ones that that you can put in your backyard and you rotate yourself. And those will be raffled off as well. And then the last event in that series will be August 8th. At the county fair, we're going to be tabling and raffling off 2 tumblers and getting the rest of those whatever compost bins are in remaining after this next event will be handed out there as well. And then one of the other things that we're working on is, like I said, one of the things that has been really well received by the municipalities are educational events. And so we are continuing to educate municipalities on various climate topics, renewable energy, data centers, all of these kinds of things. And the county board has asked us to put together an educational panel, which will go live at the end of June. I'm not giving any more information out because the PR team will be sending out social media posts on it this afternoon. So, but we will have some pretty heavy hitter speakers, if I do say so myself, on data centers and on the deployment of battery energy storage systems. It'll be a moderated panel, so we'll be asking them questions and getting questions from the audience and facilitating a dialogue amongst the panelists and with the public. The point of it is to get education out to the public about these topics, not necessarily to sway the conversation in one way or the other. You're asked to provide a balanced perspective. So all of the speakers are experts in their field. None of them are industry representatives. So that's what we got so far. This is the big thing, is that the public comment period right now is open for the draft of the climate action plan. So all of the strategies I just went over, all of them have somewhere between 2 and 6 actions. So you can go download the plan and read more information about it on your own time and leave a public comment online. We want the most positive public comments, the most number of positive public comments is what we can get. So promote that. And what else do we have? That's what we got going on right now. Molly.
Hi, yeah. I was just curious if you're working with other counties, like are other counties developing this? Is it just like blue counties? Like what does that look like across the state? Because I know there's a statewide action plan and maybe that's, I don't know, getting close
Yeah.
a little bit like I've heard about in a lot of places. So I'm just curious what that looks like.
Yeah. So we are working with other counties right now in 2 primary ways. So in our area, in our neck of the woods in Southwest Michigan, Van Buren, Cass County, Calhoun County, Branch, or maybe not Branch. I'm forgetting one, but our surrounding Allegan, the surrounding counties are not as densely populated as Kalamazoo County is. So the city of Kalamazoo has is basically the population center for this region of Michigan. And so the fact that the city of Kalamazoo has a sustainability plan and team, and the fact that I at the county exist, so there's a sustainability planner at the county level, is unique amongst all of those counties. And so the fact that I'm putting on events or providing educational materials and programming has been attractive to many of the municipal planning staff across other counties. For instance, we had Calhoun municipal staffers come through and attend those municipal meetings for ordinance development and resources on both data centers and battery energy storage systems that we had earlier this year. So we do have interest from surrounding counties, and I do get calls sometimes from other residents of other counties because they don't have sustainability staff. So they call me and ask me, well, what can I do in my neck of the woods? And sometimes we have meetings with other climate conscious organizations, and they ask, how can we start a similar thing in my neck of the woods? So we have that kind of collaboration. And then also I'm in, the second thing is that I'm also in actually three things. So the second thing is that we are in the Michigan Green, or the My Green Communities Network. That is an Eagle sponsored network of sustainability resources. It's kind of like an exchange of sustainability resources. We all agree to meet certain sustainability standards and report on them annually. And then we get ranked as to the level of our sustainability. And so you could be bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. And these are any municipalities or local governments. So the city of Kalamazoo is a part of that network, as well. The Kalamazoo County is, Washtenaw County is, the city of Ann Arbor, Grand Rapids, Detroit, all of the Oakland County is a part of it. So that's pretty spread out across the county, and we do regular check-ins and meetings, and there's regular exchanges of resources through that network. The county is currently ranked gold, and the only ones who are ranked platinum, which is the only level higher than us in sustainability programming, is Ann Arbor and Grand Rapids. But they did just recently develop the platinum. So like that's only been around like a year. So we've been gold this year. We just reached gold status, so that's great. And then the third thing is that I am in the midst of reaching out to sustainability staff across the county to create our kind of like our own group where we meet together. And actually this afternoon, after this meeting concludes, I have a meeting with Washtenaw County sustainability staff where we can start setting up regular meetings and communicating programming and successes and failures and things like that. So there's a lot of different ways that we're interacting across the state and with different levels of governments. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Awesome. Tim?
So again, getting back to the question on the context in which you operate, I'm sure you're aware that there's a effort underway in the state legislature to repeal the 2023 standards and
Yeah.
so on. So I'm wondering if there should be any provision in the plan to address the possibility of the changing political environment, as of course we're deeply aware of has occurred on the national level, and what happens, what if that happens in Michigan?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think that there's any legislation to repeal the county or the climate action plan itself, but just the renewable energy acts that were passed subsequent to it is my understanding of it so far. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that. But you're right, it is a concern that there's political waves that can influence those planning efforts at the state level. The thought behind aligning our overarching goals with the state's goals was so that when grant funding is released, our programming aligns with what they're looking for. So that we're more likely to get grants as kind of a practical perspective. But those metrics are good metrics to set in, regardless of if the state is in alignment or not. But that's a good perspective, removing the language in alignment with state's goals might give it a little bit more protection from the waves. That's good. Thank you, Tim, for bringing that up.
Well, this is a lot of exciting stuff, and it's a huge body of work pulled off over a relatively short amount of time, and a lot to be feeling good about. So thank you for some of your time today. Thank you for all of your work. And Taylor's an easy person to find. So if there are questions, if there are folks who you feel like she should be connected with, don't hesitate to reach out.
I will be presenting the plan to the county board June 16th. It will be like a brief 10-minute presentation where I give them basically this, but like just 10 minutes of it. And then we're hoping to, after the public comment period closes in July, taking a couple months to process those comments and then getting it before the board again for adoption. So in terms of advocacy, showing up either at the 16th meeting, it's the 4 o'clock meeting, the COW, the Committee of the Whole. It'll only be for 10 minutes, so you don't necessarily have to show up. But what would be really impactful is when it comes back up, keep an eye out for when it comes back up for public hearing and for adoption, and showing support and showing up will have a huge impact.
And then I want to wrap this call by saying this, though we still need to move through the county approval process, this is a giant accomplishment for the Kalamazoo community, for the county, and for KC3, and has become and will continue to be a launching pad for some really good work that's happening in Kalamazoo and will happen in Kalamazoo. And many of you on this call are responsible for helping to make this happen, and helping to bring Taylor to Kalamazoo and establish Taylor's role here. And then just end with a reminder that this all started from a little idea of this coordinating committee that we wanted to have, what at the time we called a climate czar in Kalamazoo. That was in part, I want to say, a credit to Denise Keel's brain brought this idea to us, and we went for it, and it seemed far-fetched at the time, and look at where we are. So just want to add that in on the end there. Thank you all. Really good work. Great work, Taylor. I cannot imagine having found a better person to step into this role and carry this forward.
I did not do it alone. It was a huge effort, especially on the part of everybody in this committee who participated and brought me here, and the community who's been very supportive, and everybody who participated in public outreach and all of that. Like, it couldn't have been done alone. So thank you all for listening and all of your questions and engagements. I am accessible. My email is online. You feel free to reach out at any time.